Liberal Viewer presents.
So there's been a lot of bias on Fox News against the Occupy Wall Street movement almost since it began, but last week when the Oakland police used excessive force on one of the Occupy protests in my local region of Northern California, the way Fox News' top-rated cable news program The O'Reilly Factor spun the police violence as the fault of the protesters was especially bad, especially for a show calling itself the No Spin Zone, with the spin beginning during the top of the show teaser you can see here.
Tonight. Violence erupts in Oakland, California as the Occupy Wall Street protesters refuse to obey the police. Also, more anti-Semitism among the occupiers.
The Jews commit more white-collar crimes than any other ethnic group on the earth.
And now, not only does that clip unfairly smear Occupy Oakland with the anti-Semitism label, as I'll show in a moment, but it also seemed to imply that the violence came from the occupiers, an implication made explicit in the segment that followed, actually uploaded to the Fox News website under the title, More Violence from the Occupiers, and beginning with those words in this clip.
More violence from the occupiers. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Last night in Oakland, California, some Occupy Wall Street protesters tried to defy police orders and march on City Hall. At least 5 protesters were arrested, several injured, along with 2 police officers who were also hurt. Police estimate nearly 1,000 demonstrators took part in the clash last night.
Now, not only did that summary of events leave out even the possibility of excessive force by the police and never even mention the tear gas canister that hit Iraqi war veteran Scott Olson in the head and seriously injured him, but O'Reilly's argument then went on to unfairly smear the Oakland occupiers with the anti-Semitism label in the continuation of that clip here.
And in addition, more anti-Semitism is surfacing among the occupiers.
And I'll say that the Jews control Wall Street. Google Jewish billionaires. Google Jews in the Federal Reserve Bank. Google Jews and Wall Street. America's finances is controlled by the Jews. Wall Street, the media, the legal profession. The Jews commit more white-collar crimes than any other ethnic group on the earth.
Now, if you research the source of that last clip, you'll find that it not only comes from the previous week as shown, but it comes from thousands of miles away from Oakland, from some guy on the streets of New York in no way associated with Occupy Oakland, a fact which Bill O'Reilly never pointed out on his so-called No Spin Zone, though maybe the worst spin of all came in the following segment when O'Reilly brought on his frequent guest, creepy political consultant Dick Morris, to give this piece of misinformation to viewers.
If they're demonstrating in Oakland, which used to be run by Jerry Brown, who's the former mayor of Oakland, and you have to assume that he's hired radicals up and down his city government, and the Oakland police need to use tear gas. Imagine what happens when they get to a city with a more robust police force like Chicago.
Now, the problem with that analysis is that it fails to inform viewers of the history in Oakland of excessive force by police, including excessive violence used against anti-war protesters in 2003, which led to a lawsuit and historic settlement detailed on a great webpage put out last week by the ACLU of Northern California, a group for which I volunteer on the board of directors, and on that webpage you'll find that the Oakland police promised in a 2004 legal settlement to use only the minimal force necessary and the minimal chemical agents necessary for crowd control, which certainly doesn't seem to fit with the police actions in Oakland last week, but of course none of that information made it onto the O'Reilly Factor, and what really struck me about the poor quality of the supposed news analysis on the O'Reilly Factor that night was that on that same night, probably recorded about the same time over on Comedy Central, was the comedic analysis from Jon Stewart and his writers that was so much more enlightening than the supposed news analysis over on Fox, which you can see, for example, beginning with Jon Stewart's ridicule of the idea that the police use of force was justified by public safety concerns in this clip.
So the city was concerned about a public safety threat, so they did this. Seems a little heavy-handed. Unless was one of the protesters Godzilla. That would justify an attack.
And unlike Godzilla, most of the occupiers in Oakland were far from dangerous, which Jon Stewart went on to point out using examples like the man in the wheelchair in this clip.
That guy was a public menace? What do you think, that chair comes on ramming speed? Come on! Look, I know a self-selected group of people can't take over public space forever. It's public space. It's for everyone, including people who don't consider drum circles to be sleepy time music. But seems to me there might have been a less way of resolving this.
No, that was actually a balanced analysis, pointing out both that the occupiers' right to demonstrate may be limited, but also that the police use of force should have limits too. A much more balanced presentation than the supposed news analysis back over at the O'Reilly Factor, which seemed designed to smear the Occupy movement to drown out its message about the way the ultra-wealthy on Wall Street are really the ones responsible for current U.S. economic troubles, a fact that's been missing in the public debate for the last couple years, as Nobel Prize-winning economist Paul Krugman pointed out on a recent edition of Fareed Zakaria's GPS on CNN here.
Somehow all of that, the discussion of who are these guys, why are we supporting them, why haven't they paid more for this, what are the reforms that's going to stop this from happening again, all that disappeared from the debate. We've been arguing about who's going to cut Social Security and what about that budget deficit, and we lost the whole thread of the core issue in our society right now. And these protesters, who are a mix of all sorts of people, suddenly brought that back into the center of our national debate. And just for that, that's an enormously positive contribution.
And that's right. That's already a significant accomplishment of the Occupy movement, whatever happens next, I think. But I want to know what you think. Has the Occupy movement already been successful by changing the subject back to Wall Street's responsibility for current U.S. economic troubles? And looking towards the future, will the Occupy movement be able to take the attention it's put on Wall Street's responsibility for current U.S. economic troubles and turn it into better solutions for the 99%?
I YouTube, you decide.